Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Angela Gennari, and I am the host of the Pretty Powerful Podcast. Today, I am joined by Danielle Orsino, who is an award-winning fantasy novelist. Thank you so much for joining us, Danielle.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk to you.
Yes, ma'am. And if you guys don't have your video on, you really should, because she looks absolutely amazing today. She is in full fae regalia, so she's absolutely gorgeous. So Danielle Orsino is an award-winning fantasy novelist whose lifelong vision is to create whimsical realms that her readers can escape to. Her compelling word weaving pays homage to a multitude of personal muses, from Claremont and George Pérez, both famous comic book writers, to Anne Rice, Jim Henson, and Wonder Woman. She is an award-winning cosplayer known for her DC interpretations. Danielle's Birth of the Fae series is published by Horsemen Publications. Thank you again for joining us. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
I can't wait.
So tell me how you got started in fantasy novels. That's an amazing genre.
It wasn't something I did not set out. Let me start with that. It wasn't like I woke up one morning and was like, oh, today I shall be a fantasy novelist. Let's go. No, that was so far from the truth. It was not on my radar. My dad will tell you that I always wanted to write. He found an essay from when I was in second grade that said, when I grow up, I want to be an author. But the next week, I also wrote an essay saying why I wanted to be Wonder Woman when I grew up. So,
well, you're not far from either. So
no, that's what I say. We were close.
Yes.
What happened was I was actually working as a nurse in an IV clinic for Lyme disease. And I met a patient. I grew very close to him, and he just didn't want to do treatment anymore. The way we were treating Lyme was very different than most traditional protocols, where you took some tetracycline and we called it a day after 2 weeks.
Right.
This was IV dripping every single day. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, you were dripping.
Wow.
And I worked holidays, weekends. That was what I was pretty much hired to do. And this patient and I started the first day I started, he started his protocol. We just walked that path, and he just didn't want to do it anymore after about probably a year and a half. So he struck a deal with the doctor, because he had uprooted his life from a couple states away to New York. And he was like, I got to get back to work. I can't stay here anymore. So the deal he struck was that he would drive 5 hours on a Wednesday, drip for 2, turn around and go home, and then come back and spend Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday morning, turn around and go home. I knew it wasn't going to last, but I was like, okay, cool. After about 3 weeks a month, he was like, I can't do this anymore. So we had a discussion, and I said, look, what can we do? So he's like, well, entertain me, do something, keep me in this chair. And we had just a conversation. I was like, well, tell me something interesting about yourself, whatever. And then he casually mentioned that he was recruited by the CIA out of college.
Wow.
And I'm like,
very cool.
How did we not talk about this after a year and a half?
Yeah.
And so a couple jokes were made and how he didn't take the job and whatever. We went down the conspiracy theory hole of, Area 51, whatever.
Yeah.
And I just made some jokes. And then I said something to the effect of, well, where Lyme comes from. And he goes, Plum Island and, the government and whatever. And I went, no. And out of my mouth to this day, I still don't know why I said it, but I went, the Fae. And he was like, what? And I'm like, fairies. And I kind of just went off on a tangent about how it's payback for the way we treat the environment, which the books aren't even about that, but I just threw it out there. And he was like, well, who are the Fae? And I just made up this story about they're really angels that were locked out of heaven after the war with Lucifer. And it just kind of wove itself. And then I said, but being a CIA agent undercover here at this Lyme disease clinic, you're trying to find out if the nurse is really a Fae human hybrid. And he just sat back and he went, yeah, that's what I'm doing here.
Uh-huh.
And I just started telling him a story, and I put him in the book as this CIA agent. And we just started talking, and every day he came in, I told him another chapter, just making it off the top of my head.
Wow.
I didn't think I was going to
Wow.
write a book. And he
Right.
encouraged me. He was the one that, like, every day, like, he would be like, "You're going home and writing this down, right?"
Wow.
And then
That's
I was like, "No."
amazing.
And
Hmm.
then here we are with a series. Go figure.
That's incredible. Well, I love it because you allowed him to escape so that he could deal with whatever he was dealing with in his reality. And I think that that's powerful. That's so powerful. So you start, you're telling him these stories, everything is going well. And then at what point do you say, okay, I think I'm going to take this on as a book? And what did
Uh,
that entail?
I was still fighting. I joke that I was still fighting against the universe like a salmon swimming
Uh-huh.
upstream. I
Right.
still was fighting against it. I was like,
Mm,
I'm going to go to physician assistant school. I had been doing all my
mhm.
prereqs. I was really working hard. And I'm
Right.
like, nope, I'm going to go pump some faces full of Restylane. And this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like,
Yeah.
I have a logical plan.
Mm,
This is it. And he was the one who was like, you have to go and write these stories down. And I'm like, yeah, whatever.
mm,
And then I had gotten interviews to physician assistant programs, which is really competitive. It's very stressful.
right.
And I had been waitlisted on some. I was close to getting in on others, going back and forth, and we're doing all this. And then I went into anaphylactic shock after a needle stick at
Wow.
work. And so I had been having little hive breakouts and things like that going on at work. Lungs were feeling a little tight working with the drugs that I was working with, mixing. But we
Mhm.
worked in a basement. I figured, oh, it's a basement, it's moldy, it's whatever. Didn't think
Right.
anything. I had a needle stick, and I then had to be treated with the very drug I had been treating everybody else with.
Wow.
And 2 minutes after that IV went going, I looked around and went, I don't feel so good. And I probably didn't even get out the I don't feel so good before my lungs collapsed and everything tightened up. And I went into anaphylactic shock in that very Lyme disease clinic.
Wow.
And the irony was not lost on me, but I was kind of laughing because at the same time, I'm texting that very patient who's laughing back at me, going, well, now you know what it's like to get stuck with a needle. And he's making all these sarcastic comments. And then I stop responding. And he's like, I was kidding. He's like, I'm joking and I'm not responding.
Uh-huh.
And then he's hearing through the grapevine that, from other patients, oh, the nurse here is like she's in trouble, like real trouble. Something's going on. And I went into anaphylactic shock, and it turns out I was so allergic that when I saw the allergist, he's like, I don't know, you're a girl with a peanut allergy working in a peanut butter factory. He's like, I don't know how
Wow.
you're surviving. And at that very time, I find out, yes, you're getting into the program. I had started writing the books at that point, like just kind of writing down the stories. I had some interest, and now I've got to deal with all of this. So I'm like, here's my dream. Yeah, I started writing the books. What do I do? And I'm trying to just comprehend. I decide, I speak to the allergist. He's like, well, maybe if you don't mix it, we could do this. We're trying to work around it because I don't want to lose my job.
Sure.
And I decide I'm still going to work there because I've loved these patients so much. I mean, I'm there every day with them. And I continue to write. I'm going through the final interviews for this PA program. And I get some interest from one of the big three publishers, and it's their metaphysical imprint.
Wow. That's
So not
incredible.
their fantasy division where you're like, yeah, it's the metaphysical, like
Okay.
down, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I go to them and they're like, look, we want to divide the book in half, but we only take 3 fiction books a year, and we just took the third one. They said, so come back next year. We're going to take this. We just need you to make, and I'm like, okay, I'll think about it. I'm like, I'm thinking. I was like, it sounds good. It sounds good.
Okay.
Um, Let me think, And at that point, one of the PA programs comes around and goes, here's your acceptance letter.
Wow.
And I'm
Okay.
like, okay, I'm going to go to PA school. I got the book, but I'm going to go to PA school. But I got like this manuscript, this synopsis, this query, and I have an offer that's like, come back January, we're going to take this. And then as I'm reading the contract for PA school, down really way at the bottom says employment contract.
Oh.
And I'm like, what's this? So I read it. And I have a friend who's a lawyer, and he goes, okay, basically what this says is you cannot work for the 2.5 years you're in this program. He's like, or else it's a $30,000 fine.
Oh.
Your credits are null and void because it's med school. You can't transfer. He's like, and your loans all go into default. He's like, you need to
Wow.
clarify this. He said, because if you decide to go with this imprint, he's like, I don't know if this counts as employment. And I'm like,
Mm.
I said, yeah, but if they take the book, they take the book. He goes, but you're going to have to edit during that time. He's like, clarify this. He's like, just call the school and clarify. He's like, it's a gray area.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I call the school. I get the head of the department on the phone and I tell him what's going on. And it's funny because he's talking. He goes, wait a minute. He's like repeating my name. He's like, bright red hair. I go, yeah. He goes, you wore a blue power suit to the interview. I go, yeah. Yes, that would be me. He said, did you read the room that everybody was wearing black and white? I go, that was a little bit of my Hillary Clinton like power moment. And I go, not that had anything to do with political beliefs. It was like my woman, like,
Yeah,
here
sure.
I am. And he's like, yeah, I remember you, honey. He's like, I remember exactly who you are. And so I explained the situation. He goes, look, do I think if the book comes out, are you, he's like, technically, yes, you're in violation. He's like, would I personally press charge,
Yeah.
pursue this? He goes, no. He says, now, I cannot tell you that there won't be a doctor or professor that never wanted to be a lawyer, an author in their life.
Right.
He's going to come back and slide this and go, she's in violation. He's like, if that happens, I have to follow through. And I'm like, oh. And then he explained the rules again to me. And he's like, you understand the school's $220,000.
Oof. Wow.
And he's like, and to hold your place, I need 20 grand in 30 days. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, do you want to know what I would do? I said, yeah. He goes, totally off the record. I said, totally off the record. He goes, bet on red, honey. He goes, go bet on yourself and write your books.
Oh, wow.
And I hung up, looked at the letter again. And at that point, I said no to one of the big 3 imprints. I said no to them. Took time to like really get it the way I wanted it, and then passed on everything. And here I am.
Wow. That's a great story. Good for you. Good for you. So that leads me into a million more questions. So you go into starting your book and you find a publisher. So then what happens? Do they give you money to live off of, or are you just, it's a hope and a prayer and, this thing's got to work? Are you just
It's a
all
hope and a
in?
prayer.
Yeah.
It's a hope and a prayer. That's it. My first publisher, which I've changed now to Four Horsemen, my first publisher had never done fiction. They'd only done nonfiction. I was their first fiction, which looking back, it's kind of, when you're an author, I equate it to your first 8th grade dance.
Okay.
Where you're sitting it and you're like, I hope somebody dances with me. I hope somebody dances with me. Oh my God, is anybody going to ask me to dance? And the first person who does, you're like, yes. And you just run. That's what I equate it to. I did not go with the major imprint because to me, it was still like, will you take me in January? Will you not? Like, it didn't feel right. When I looked at everything, they would give me an advance, but I still had to pay the advance back in sales. If I didn't make it, I owed them. It was a very tricky dance we were doing. And I wasn't sure a metaphysical imprint was right for me. I didn't know. Yeah, they were big, but the marketing behind, I was really, I spoke to a lawyer and he's like, I don't know if this is the right fit.
Yeah.
So he's like, hold out. So I went with the second one. Once again, not my greatest move. And then I met Four Horsemen. But during that time, no, they did nothing. I had to do it all. I had to edit the book, down to like designing the cover was up to me, which gave me a lot of freedom, but I had to do all the marketing myself. They were just pretty much like, we'll give you distribution.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. What I did realize is that when you leave a publisher, it's much like a divorce. Some are amicable, some are not.
Okay.
So you're constantly learning. I met Four Horsemen on a podcast. They had me as a guest. And at the end of it, the screen went, we stopped recording, screen went blank. And then they were like, so how happy are you with your publisher? They were like, because we
Right.
heard some rumblings and we really like the book. Why don't you come with us? And then I made the switch over. But, writing the first book, I probably did everything wrong that you could possibly want to do. I did,
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
you know.
Mhm.
So, but I learned a lot.
That's the only way we learn, right? Is people can tell us to do something, do X, Y, Z, and then you'll be successful. But we're like, yeah, but I kind of want to do C and D and R and K, and let's just see how this goes. And you learn, and some things work and some things don't. And, I feel like experience is the best teacher.
You know what? I didn't have it. I didn't even have the guidance from my first publisher saying, "Hey, you should do this," or "Why not do
Mhm.
that?" I didn't. It was just me going, "Okay, now line editing versus developmental." I had a great developmental editor who I found on my own, and he has continued to be my developmental editor. Uh, and he was phenomenal. But I didn't know line editing. I didn't know the difference. I was like, "Okay, who does what? What happens?" It was little things that I just didn't understand about the process. And you can read about it, and that's great, but actually going through it, totally different experience.
Okay.
Completely. So there was a lot to do.
Okay, I see. So let's go into cosplay because I'm curious to see how this plays into it. Because you had been doing this for a while prior to writing. So did that just add into the creativity and the storytelling? How did that play in together?
Cosplay, yes, I'd been doing it for a very long time. I didn't know the two were going to mesh and blend
Yeah.
until I was really writing and I was doing my own fight scenes. And so as I
Okay.
was acting out the fight scenes, I would think about what they were wearing because, you got to make sure they can move.
Right.
And so I would then start grabbing capes because, you go back to the Incredibles, Edna Mole, no capes. So, I would put on a
Yeah.
cape and be like, does a cape work with this? Does it do this? And so eventually it was like, well, I can dress up as Wonder Woman all I want. I can dress up as, Poison Ivy, but let me dress up as Desdemona. And can I do these moves dressed? What would she wear? And it started to lend itself to the creativity in the sense of making things more fleshed out, more real.
Uh-huh.
So I started doing that and I'm like, "Oh, okay. No, this move works better." Or no, they would only wear a cape ceremonially. And it
Yeah.
made the Fae much more real to me. Did I think it would then lend to me being on the covers? Not in a million years was that ever. Did it even cross my mind? No. I started doing the pictures as the characters because once again, it just for me, I was like, oh, this is okay, this is Queen Aurora. This is what I want her to look like. So when I write, I now have kind of a point of reference.
Yeah.
And that's really all it started out to be was just these test characters. Let me test them out. This is how I think I want them to look. And I also thought for artists down the road, I wanted to do a graphic novel. I would have something to give them.
Yeah.
That's just really what it started out as. And then it wound up being, when the Four Horsemen saw the pictures, they had seen the first cover, which was just typeset, and they were like, "What are you doing with those pictures?" And I'm like, I don't know. They're supposed to go in a
Mm.
magazine. I don't know." And they were like, "Yeah, give us 24 hours. We got an idea." And then I wound up on the covers of all my books.
Wow, that's really, really cool. So now you're on the cover of a fantasy novel. How does that impact everything else? Because that's pretty huge for an author to be on the cover
Yeah, that was
yeah, in a fiction. Yeah.
that that blew my mind. The first time I saw it, when the mock-up was done,
Hmm.
Valerie Willis, is the COO of Four Horsemen, showed it to me, and I was kind of like, they didn't tell me. They just popped it up on the screen and went, "This is your cover." And it took me back, and I'm like, "That's me." And she's like, "Yeah, this is what we're going with." And it was just this, oh, I think they expected me to be like, "Oh my gosh." I was more like, "Holy crap." Like, um,
Mhm.
because I'm like, you're as an author, obviously you're judged for your work inside.
Sure, of course.
And we can all sit here and say, don't judge a book by its cover. We all do it. I mean,
Right,
let's
right,
face it,
right.
that's what we do. So now I'm on the outside. Now I'm like, oh, I'm getting judged for the outside and the inside. I have to reconcile this. Like,
Mm,
and as a woman, I have to figure this out.
yeah.
that was a lot for my brain to take in.
Mm-hmm.
And up to this point, the author picture I had been using fake pictures, so nobody knew what I really looked like. At the
Yeah.
end of every book, there was always a different picture of me dressed as a fae with a little note to my readers, like, "Hey, hope you like this book. Catch up what's happening next week." That
Yeah.
kind of like little
Yeah.
tongue-in-cheek Stan Lee thing. But nobody knew me, so I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay. Now they're gonna have something to say about the covers, the work." It's a lot of judgment coming at me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had to
Absolutely.
kind of build it up. But it's part of cosplaying. You do it because you're hiding behind a persona. I
Mm-hmm.
had to figure that out. So, and I'm also not a spring chicken. I'm not 25,
Right.
where you really don't care. 20, you're just like,
Right.
I'm young. I got so many years ahead of me. I'm
Right.
like, I was like, okay, does everybody realize I'm over 40 doing this like right now? Hold on, flag on the play, back up a
Right.
second. Like I had to breathe a
Mm.
little bit. And the deal I had made with them was I was like, you can't airbrush me to look 25.
Right.
I was like,
Mm.
that if I'm going to do this, then let's make a statement with it. Let's let
Yeah.
everybody know I'm over a certain age. I'm doing this. We're not going to do unrealistic body. I said, and when it comes to the point where everybody's in agreement that I can't do it anymore, I
Yeah.
said, you're going to sit me down, FedEx me a pint of Haagen-Dazs and be like, okay, sweetie, you're going to tell me. I said, I'm going to curse at the screen. Whatever I say, I said, you guys have to just roll off your back. And the next
Uh-huh.
day, hey, I love you. Okay, it's all forgotten. I said, I can pick who the next person will be to be on the covers. So I have a say in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did. And look, I still struggle with it. There's still times I look at the cover and I'm like, okay, maybe we could airbrush that. Maybe it's okay. We could fix that.
Yeah.
There's still days where, the derm is like on speed dial and I'm like, some Botox wouldn't hurt me. But then I'm
Mm.
like, okay, I have to just accept this is me and go from
Yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm. I love it. So I love that you owned it and that, they they are putting you on the cover because they see you as you are the character, right? And so I love that. And I love that, you had the courage to do it because it's not easy. Like you were saying, like, as women, we're often like, okay, well, if I put myself out there in this image of being beautiful, then I also can't be smart, or I also can't be powerful, or like we feel like there's an either or, and
Mm-hmm.
honestly, that's why it's called the Pretty Powerful Podcast, right? Because when I was thinking about what to call this podcast, it came to, women are often judged as, she's allowed to be pretty, but she's not allowed to be powerful. And we feel like we have to choose one or the other. We can be powerful or we can be pretty, right? But
Yes.
why not give ourselves the permission to be both? And to be pretty powerful and to really own that space of saying, I'm beautiful in my own way, whatever that looks like, whatever physically I may not be what somebody else wants, but everybody's different. But I feel beautiful as I am, and I feel powerful as I am. And that was kind of the ownership that you took when you allowed this cover, because you're beautiful, but you're also powerful.
I think I'm taking it in and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to become comfortable with it. But to be honest, my younger self would never have done this.
Really?
My younger self would have pushed back hard on this.
Right.
This version of me is like the age I'm at now is like, okay, we're going to give it a shot. Now, would
Sure.
I like the skin of my younger self?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
But this is the only version of me that could do this.
Mm.
I'm trying to reconcile it and make sense. But no, I couldn't have done that. Like, I really would have pushed hard and been like, yeah, I don't know if I could do that. Like, I
Yeah.
really would have been like, no, I'm not comfortable. But
Mm-hmm.
what I find is interesting is that when I do get like women who push back when I'm on the cover, I'm like, you can't work out your high school trauma on me because you don't know me. And like,
Right.
I actually wrote what's in the book as well. I did all the world building. I did all the research for the dragons. That's all me.
Yeah.
Just because I'm on the cover with a fin or a crown
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't lessen or minimize my work as an author.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So that's, I love that you're owning that and you're taking your power back, because, as women, we give our power away so often, whether it's allowing somebody to criticize us or allowing those criticisms to minimize who we believe we are and what we're capable of. And, stepping into that power is what it sounds like you're doing now, with owning being on that cover and writing what's inside and standing up for yourself. So tell me about a time that you gave away your power and what that looked like.
Unfortunately, I've done it a lot, and I'm trying to get better with it,
Mm.
but I did it a lot when I was in martial arts because martial arts is a hierarchy. You have an
Oh, okay.
instructor and then, the underlings, as I call them,
Right. Right.
Uh, and I did it. I was bullied by instructors coming
Really?
up through the ranks, and they were usually men because
Mm-hmm.
it does it. It is a male dominated field.
Right.
Any way you look at it, it just
Right.
is. There's nothing bad about it, but that's just the way it is. And I did allow a certain instructor to tell me, this is how you should look, this is how you should compete, this
Mm.
is how it should go. And I let it happen for a very long time, where he would say I must be sleeping with my instructor in order to get where I am. It was never I got where I am
Mm-hmm.
because of skill. It must be
Right.
that I'm sleeping with somebody, I'm doing this and doing that. And he bullied me for years, to the point where it was physical at times. And i
Wow.
i did allow it to happen because I thought, I'm stuck to a point in, this is how the martial arts is, and that's okay, I know who I am. You kind of like, you don't realize it's still toxic,
Yes.
and you're like, yeah, but I'm good at myself and whatever. And it wasn't until a tournament that he had hosted where it was just so blatant. It was to the point where I had won the female fighting black belt division, and then my assistant instructor had won the men's division. And the tournament flyer, it said men, female, grand champion, they'll fight. So I lined up to fight. And my assistant instructor was like, this is so cool, we're going to fight each other. He's like, this is every instructor's dream, to have their student match. And the
Wow.
the head of the organization, who was one who was being a pain in my neck, bullying me, came up and he went, eeny, meeny, miny. He goes, Danielle, you're not fighting. He's like, no. And the assistant went, she won. He's like, we're supposed to. And he went, no. And I looked down, I went, am I wearing my pink black belt again? Like, all the respect that I'd been giving
Uh-huh.
him just went out. And he was like, you're not. And I said, but the tournament rules say. And he's
Yeah.
like, I don't care. And I'm like, but if one of
Wow.
your students had won, you would have let it. And at that point, I took my belt off and I handed it out and I dropped it on the floor. And I said, if you define what it is to be a black belt, I don't want to be it anymore.
Mm.
And my assistant instructor, I mean, his eyes were like, and I said, I'm done with the bullying. I'm just done with all of it. And I said, I'd like to tell you it's been a little slice of heaven, but it hasn't. And then somebody went, did she just quote Bugs Bunny? And I went, yes, I did. And I turned around and I had just been fed up and I took my power back, but I lost everything. I lost my
Yeah.
rank, lost my organization, lost my kin, like, who I thought were my people.
Right.
And I walked out.
Wow.
But it took me 8 years of the rumors, the bullying, the physical abuse, all of it.
Wow.
But I did it eventually. But to this day, it still haunts. There's still healing that needs to go on. And then I did jump back into another, like
Yeah.
the cycle continued for a while, but yeah, I did it.
Wow. Well, good for you for standing up for yourself and taking your power back, because I think that translates so many other places in life, right? Like when you start taking your power back in something that continually pulls you down and pulls you down and pulls you down, and you step into your power and you say, no more, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm willing to throw it all on the table and risk everything to walk away from this. It's just not worth it. I
Yeah,
believe it sets you up for bigger things in life. It really does.
I believe it does. I think the thing is that you have to realize, when you're doing it there, where else does that behavior happen?
Yes,
And I have caught it
absolutely.
where, if I have a good idea, I'll kind of say, oh, I heard it somewhere here, like out in the
Uh,
ether,
yeah.
even though it was my idea. And I
Oh, yeah.
find women do that a lot,
Yep.
because it's like, for some reason, we're scared of rejection, but we're almost scared that if we say this, it'll be expected of us time and time again, and we can't live up to those expectations. I think we set ourselves up,
Yes.
for like, don't expect too much out of us, but we want to be respected, but don't expect too much. It's like there's so much pressure on women in general, and I think we need to be softer with each other,
Yeah,
because there's
absolutely.
just judgment as women in general, that it's like we want to support each other, but not too much, but enough. But then we're nudging to get out of the way because there's not enough room out there for
Yeah.
us.
Hmm.
So it's a weird dichotomy.
Yeah, and we will take the back seat, we'll pull ourselves back and we'll undersell ourselves. It's like, well, I mean, that
Yes.
was an okay idea. Just, I heard it somewhere before, right?
Yes.
But you're right. It's just, we're afraid to step into that, power and take credit for something that we've thought of, because you're right. It could be a rejection, but it could be, judgment. It could be a lot of things. And also the expectations of, well, if I set myself up for this, then where do I go? Then I could fall back. What if I fail? What if I do this? What if the expectation is that I'm going to come to the table with great ideas, and then all of a sudden the next time they're like, oh, what happened to you? You must be sleeping,
Where was that good idea?
Yeah.
Yeah, what happened? And I think that's something that I have seen in general, or the idea that we couldn't have made mistakes in the past. Like, we
Sure.
have to be perfect all the time,
Yeah.
no skeletons in the closet, no this, no that. And it's like, everybody's got problems, issues. We need to just understand that it doesn't define who we are.
Right. Right. And it's an impossible expectation. It's an impossible expectation that we can be 100% all the time. And so, we have to give ourselves a little grace. And I think as women, we're not used to doing that. We don't give ourselves grace. We want to play at the same level all the time. And so that's
Mhm.
why we never reach too high, because we don't want to drop too low. And so,
Yep.
we're afraid of that. So we have to give ourselves permission to have grace,
Agreed.
it's not easy. So, so you inspired your patient to continue with his treatment. So who inspires you?
I know this sounds very cliche, but I have to say, my hero is Wonder Woman, and always has
Yeah.
been. I have a tattoo of Wonder Woman on my back. Uh, she inspires me, and in whether it's the Linda Carter
Hmm.
iteration, Gal's iteration, or just the comic book in general,
Yeah.
I began watching Wonder Woman 4 years old. I think is the my earliest recollection I have of seeing the
Hmm.
reruns and things. But this idea of this character that was strong, compassionate, but could crush something with her bare hands, but chose not to, always
Hmm.
fascinated me.
Yes.
It was just, I was just very like, this is interesting, because up to that point, I had only seen Batman and Robin,
Hmm.
and then I saw Yvonne Craig a little bit as Batgirl, and I thought, all right, that's cool. But you never saw her punch. You only saw her kick. And even as a kid, I realized that. I was like,
Interesting.
she only kicks people. Like,
Huh.
that's okay, but why?
Yeah.
What was it? And then I saw Linda Carter, and I'm like, what is this? What is this creature? This
Hmm.
is different. She doesn't need a sidekick.
She is the person. That's what I love about her.
Yeah.
She's not like Superwoman, where, she's just the female iteration of the male.
Yeah.
Right?
She
Like
was,
that's Batgirl, and that's Superwoman, but Wonder Woman is her own woman.
that's what I was always like, okay, like she rescued Steve Trevor, but she didn't have to have him. Like, there
Right.
was
Hmm.
never, that she could go off on her own, and she didn't call him for backup. And I was always watching it thinking, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't need a utility belt. There were always things that I was like, this is different. And in my little
Yes.
brain, I'm like, something has shifted cosmically on this level.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to know everything about her. I had, you name dolls, coloring, whatever. I had it. And my dad jokes that he knew this was my core belief, my core inspiration, when I went to, I think it was preschool, nursery school, whatever it was, and the kids weren't playing together. And I'm half Puerto Rican, half
Hmm.
Italian. When I was younger, I had a little bit of darker skin, and so the African American kids would not play with me because
Hmm.
I wasn't dark enough. The white kids wouldn't play with me because I didn't look like them.
Right.
And so he got a phone call that I broke all the crayons. So he's like, "Well, how'd she break the crayons?" So the teacher said, she's like, well, she took all the wrappers off, took a piece of paper, took the white, went over to the white kids and said, see, you're not white, you're peach. Then went over to the black kids, did the same thing, showed them all the colors and said, if the crayons can live in the box, why can't we play? And then she said all the kids started playing together.
Interesting.
She's like,
wow.
and he goes, so why do I have to come pick her up? She's like, because she took all the wrappers off and said, we shouldn't have labels. We shouldn't have colors. You're peach, you're this, you're that. And he goes, great. So she's like, you got to buy us all new crayons because I'm trying to teach the kids colors and I can't do it if the crayons don't have colors. So he goes, I'm bringing them. So he comes in and he's like, what did you do? And I looked right up and I said, I'm an ambassador like Wonder Woman.
Oh.
And he just looked at her and he goes, tell me what 3-4-year-old knows the word ambassador.
Right.
And she goes, well, I can't get the cape off of her or the tinfoil bracelets. She's like, so we need to do something about this Wonder Woman thing. And he goes, if my kid can get all these kids to play together.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not doing a darn thing but taking her home to watch Wonder Woman.
That's right.
He's like, so we're fine. And she's like, she can't keep wearing the underoos on the outside of her clothes anymore. She's like, she can't.
Right.
So he's like, he said at that point he knew this probably wasn't going away anytime soon.
Of course.
And it didn't. I mean, that it just stuck with me to the point where, I would always think, what would Wonder Woman do? Like that just stayed with me through high school, through everything, up through nursing. She was a nurse.
Yeah.
What would Wonder Woman do? And I try to keep that compassion with me under most circumstances.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And what I love about that is that it didn't go away, it evolved. Right. So I love that you still harbor that within you. It still is in you, and you haven't, squashed it and made it go away. So I think that that's fantastic.
Yeah. I don't think, I kind of joke that most people could learn a little more kindness if they just watch the old Wonder Woman shows.
Yeah, for sure.
As campy as they are, just, it kind of teaches you everything you need to know. Just watch it and you'll learn a little compassion. That's really all there is.
Oh, 100%, 100%. So as a woman, I'm sure you've had a million challenges in putting your book together. What do you think has made it different with being a woman versus, a man as an author publishing books?
I was asked several times to change to my initials. Don't let anybody see that you're a woman in fantasy.
Really?
Change it to DM Orsino instead of Danielle M. Because, I'm a woman in fantasy. There's not a lot of women in true, epic high fantasy. The funny thing I get, and I still get it to this day, is that I have no romance in my book. I have like glimpses of romance in book 3. It's the enemies to lovers trope, but leading up to it, there's no romance. Okay. And with the Fae, that's a normal thing. Like Sarah J. Maas, Cassandra Clare, like a lot of them, they're romance driven plots. I am not. But because I'm a woman, it's assumed that my book will be romantic. And so when they get it, they're like, okay, who falls? And I'm like, no. I have great fight scenes, phenomenal fight scenes. This is what I do. I'm a martial artist. I'm a world champion martial artist. Of course I have fight scenes. Right. And then people write, I must be very angry. Or it's a very violent book. And I'm like, my book is no more violent than anything else. Yeah. It's just, I don't have sweeping horseback battle scenes. Right. Mine are very 3 people fighting. And yes, they're detailed. I videotape all my fight scenes. I act them out. But because I'm a woman, I'm angry. I'm violent. I'm very violent, to where if a man wrote it, it would just be a fight scene. It wouldn't be this would not be a blip on the radar. Right. But because I'm a woman, she's very angry and there's no romance. And when are we getting romance? And I'm like, these Fae are trying to figure out what to do with their lives. They were angels. They can't go back home. My chick does not have time to be swiping right or left on Tinder. Okay, this queen is very busy.
She's busy. So leave her alone.
they can't grasp because I'm a woman. Yeah. So I found that to probably be the most disturbing piece of it. That they're so like, oh, she's angry and oh my gosh, or that I would dare challenge, the idea of Christianity. to where, you know, I'm on blasphemy lists and I've got every Christian ethics group coming after me and banning the book and whatever. And then like, you get it's fantasy, right?
Right. Right. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. And you're absolutely right. You know, if it were fight scenes in a novel written by a man, nobody would question it at all. At all. But, you know, you're right. I mean, I love that you don't need, you know, to have a woman who has to be rescued by a man in order to make the romance part of it work. You know, like that's yeah, I'm over it. So yeah, I am so incredibly impressed with what you're doing, because I think it's setting a new tone for what the expectation is for women. And the angry thing, I totally get that. Like I've been told, you know, in the dating world, because I'm single and so I own a security company, and you know, the biggest concern men have is, wow, it sounds like you're really driven and successful. I mean, do you even have time to be with a man? And I'm thinking, who questions men who are successful? You know, does anyone say?
Nobody does.
Nobody says, you know, oh, you're a very successful man, do you have time to nurture your wife? You're like, come on.
It wouldn't even come up. I did that. Spoiler alert, everybody. The Dark Fae King is a virgin in my book. And that was just, everybody was like, King Jarvok hasn't been with a woman. I'm like, no. And they were like, people were looking at me like I grew another head. And I'm like, why does the Dark Fae King have to be a player?
Right.
Why can't he have just been like, you know what, I got a lot going on. And maybe I'm a little emotionally closed off and I can admit that. Why can't he be that like, you know what? Maybe I just don't want to aura blend.
Maybe I'm focusing on me.
Maybe it's just me.
Right.
And I've been busy fighting wars. And so my reward is not to go grab a chick. Maybe I'm just a little upset with this whole war thing. And I like just fighting and then going to bed alone. Maybe that's his thing. Or he was too scared to. But people were like, that's really bucking the trend. I'm like, I know. I like that. But the thing is my queen is also one. So when they finally decide to get together, they're both like, I don't know what to do. And where does it go again? You know, like they're having a little moment of just, I'm not sure how this whole thing's, and they're like, but they're Fae. I'm like, but, you know, and people were just like, and I had some people who were like, this is awesome because it goes against everything. But I had other people that were like, well, you know, the Fae, and I'm like, why? Because if I was a man writing this would be groundbreaking. Like, holy cow. But I'm like, why does she have to be a virgin and he's not? Why can't they both be?
Right. Oh,
why?
Gosh. Yes.
Why can't it just both be a moment of? And I joke that his lieutenant, who's kind of like his son, has to explain sex to him, but they call it aura blending. So he does it all in battle terms. So he doesn't have to. We don't get into the mechanics of it, you know. But I'm like, why does it have to be, you know? And somebody made a point. They were like, if this was a dude explaining, they were like, this would all be, it would be a groundbreaking thing. But because it's a woman writing it, it's more of this attitude of like, well, why? Like everybody wants an explanation of it. Where if it was a George R.R. Martin, it would be, well, no, that's of course how we're going.
Right.
You know, we're bucking the trend, man. We're doing something different.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you know. So I find it funny that even in fantasy, the stereotypes are what they are.
Absolutely.
You know, a dark Fae King has to be just this Casanova.
Yeah.
And then of course the light Fae Queen has to be a virgin.
Right. Of course. Because, you know, everybody has expectations of how the world operates in a very normal sense to them if you can put people in the categories that they know, you know. And so when you're going outside, you're coloring outside the lines a little bit, people are like, whoa, that's not the way it's supposed to be, you know. And I hate the mentality of this is the way it's supposed to be. That is just crazy to me that people still think that way. But so what advice would you give to 18-year-old you?
Oh gosh. The first thing I would tell her is not to hang her hat on achievements so much. I think, you know, I was very quote unquote driven, you know, for martial arts. You know, competing was my life at that point. At 18, I was starting to just ramp up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would probably be, you know, just because you're in martial arts doesn't mean you have to kowtow to the hierarchy.
Right.
You know, stand up for yourself just a little bit more, even if they have a belt above or whatever it is. It doesn't mean they always know best.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
at 18, you're still a kid. I understand every 18-year-old is throwing things at their phone right now and being like, I'm an adult, I'm an adult.
Right.
Yes, you're an adult looking at you,
Mm,
but there's still so much out there. So it would be, you're still a kid, and adults don't always know what's best. So you
yes.
have to kind of do it for yourself. So it would be to be my own advocate
Mm-hmm. Yes.
in the world, like moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
to be my own advocate, to give myself the same grace I give others.
Yes.
Because I'm so quick to be like, that's okay, you're having a bad day. It's cool. I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it would be to do that for myself, because I'm too quick to be like, you did this wrong, blah, 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 and just get and like beat myself up to the point of anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Give myself that little bit of grace, and to remember that not everybody is as trustworthy as you think they are. Make people work and earn your trust and respect. I was
Yes.
too quick to give,
Yeah.
way too quick to give, and it's a pattern I'm still breaking to this day. I'm
Yeah.
still breaking it, and there's a fine line between cynicism
Yeah.
and that. You know, I always joke,
Mm-hmm.
fine line between confidence and delusion, kind of the same thing.
Yes.
You know, and to have a little more confidence, because 18 goes by real quick, and 18 turns into 38, turns into 48 and 58 real fast. So I look at younger girls, women right now, and when they're like, oh, you're just old and you're jealous because I'm this, it's like, no, I'm not jealous of that. I'm jealous of the confidence that younger women nowadays display.
Yeah.
I wish I had that, and I wish I had it now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not jealous of what you got, honey. You
Right.
got it. Go for it, baby girl.
Yeah.
Go for it, but be careful, because the world is a scary place and we don't want to see you taken advantage of. And I think that's probably something I'd give advice to any 18-year-old is, the older women are not jealous of you in that sense. They're more protective.
Right.
So give that grace back. The minute you want to yell at them and say something about their age, just remember, time waits for no one. You will be that age.
Yes.
You will
This
be
is
that
true.
age, and it will be quick when someone hits you back with that comment.
Uh-huh.
Society is not nice to older women.
Right.
And I mean older women, the minute you turn 35, you're invisible,
Oh yeah.
unfortunately.
I know. Mm-hmm.
So just a little grace overall.
Mm. Yeah.
I
I
was
love
always
that.
sensitive to that when I met women, but I didn't understand what they were going through.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, it's tough because when you're a young woman, you think, oh well, it's it's a place where I have to do everything on my own. And really, like, women can lean on each other. And I think that it's getting better. I think that, women are giving grace a little bit more to each other, but there's still ridiculous standards that, other women expect us to uphold. And, social media doesn't exactly help that either.
Social media is, for as great as it is in some respects for creators and for businesses,
Mm-hmm.
in other ways, I look at it and I'm like, the pressure it puts on us
Oh yeah. Oh
is
my gosh.
crushing.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's
Absolutely.
it's absolutely crushing.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who's just, as I'm moving through the years, I'm like, I can't imagine being, having a daughter right now. I would be,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I can't even. But it's very difficult. I get it now. I mean, I get it from just the covers, the critiques on the covers.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Oh.
I'm like, and I've done it even on Bookstagram tours where
Mm.
people, they talk about the book and then they'll be like, let's get into the cover. And I've had people be like, whoever it is looks like Phoebe from Friends, and not Phoebe in a good way. And I'm like,
Oh,
what the heck does that mean? Or I've been like, she looks
wow.
like Lady Gaga before the surgery. And I'm like,
Ch-
what the heck, you people, and I'm like, first of all, Lady Gaga before the surgery, I'm like, I don't even know where we're going. Or I don't like her covers. I wish that they were more sketched, or everybody's got an opinion on what the cover should look like, whether it's about me personally or just the style. And I'm like, could you just get to the story? Like, I don't really care about your opinion about the cover, because
Right.
the cover's the cover.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I can't go and redo the cover just for one person.
Right.
I'm like, and I've told, I've said to some women before when I've done book clubs, is that you're missing the point of the cover.
Mm-hmm.
There's a woman over a certain age who wrote the book and is on the cover and is deemed the new Fabio of fantasy, whatever, take the moniker for what it is. It's a jump for women.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
care if you like,
huge.
I don't care if you like my dragon or not.
Right.
It's my dragon.
Yeah.
I'm happy with her. And everything on that cover was either I've had a hand in making, I've designed, whatever. Just look at it and go, you know what? She did it. Good job.
Yeah.
It's the same thing like when I see whether I like them or not, you got to high five and go, you know what? Whether I agree with this or not, you did it.
And you're
It
owning
doesn't
it.
matter. Yeah. Like just high five.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? The only people, sorry, people are going to hate me for saying this. The only thing I don't do that for are the Kardashians, because for obvious
Yeah.
reasons. But everybody else, I'll
Mhm.
high five you and be like, look, whether I agree with you or not, you're
Mm.
doing it
Yeah.
and you're making a statement for it. If more power to you. You know what? Just good for you, girl. Like, because somewhere
Yeah.
it's helping.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. So I have really enjoyed this conversation, but one last question for you. What do you wish more people knew?
About me, the books, or
Just
just in
life.
general?
Yeah, just life.
I think just overall, I think it is just that grace.
Yeah, give
We have
grace.
to remember that everybody's got something going on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Everybody does. Everybody's situation is different. You don't know what's happened in their past. And I joke, I've said this before, people are carrying around suitcases and you don't know what's in them emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the guitar string you're going to pluck that day that's going to
Yeah.
make that suitcase open. You just don't know the tension. And so I'm not saying that this gives everybody carte blanche to be jerks.
Right.
Not what I'm saying at all. But you just don't know. So sometimes I think we judge a little too quick, a little too
Mm-hmm.
harsh.
Yes.
Give it a second. Even I take it, taking it back to books and things like that. Everybody's quick to give an opinion on stuff. You don't know.
Yeah.
Just remember, somebody's doing a dream, they're making something happen. If you don't have something nice to say, well, don't say anything, or find
Yeah.
one good thing, unless it's something that's so offensive where you're like, okay, they're spreading hate, they're doing this. Different circumstance, totally different.
Sure.
But you know what? If somebody's living out their dream, if it's not hurting you,
Right.
it's
Let
none
'em,
of your business.
all right, let them go.
Move on, let it go. But to judge people and to get caught up in, oh, they must be like this, and make these assumptions, I think we just have to sit back and give everybody grace, because also as society, we've just come through a very difficult time with the
Yes.
lockdown, with COVID. People lost jobs, like things happened. And I think we have a short-term memory in some sense, where we
Yeah.
forget that was not too long ago,
It
and
was
not
not.
everyone has recovered.
Right. And
So
we're all
let's
on a
not be
different
so
timeline.
quick to judge.
Yeah.
Just take a step back and remember, people are still going through stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
let's just give ourselves and society in general a little bit grace, but also don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
I don't like the moniker when people turn around and go, I'm just brutally honest. I just,
Oh gosh, yeah.
I hate that. I'm like, you're not honest. You're just taking your venom and spewing it and then following it
Mm.
up with, that's just me. I'm just honest. No, you know what? If it's not going to make that person's life better, they
Mm-hmm.
probably don't need to hear it.
Right.
So how about you just
Mm.
turn and walk away, or you could find a better way to say it
Yes.
that will get through. I think
Mm-hmm.
communication is a little more key, and just women in general, we need to come together and remember our power as collectives,
Oh
as a
yeah.
group.
Mm-hmm.
We are so much stronger when we're together than when we're divided based on age, uh, based on class, whatever it is. We're just too busy poking and fighting each other and being catty, when there's no reason to.
Right. Right. There's
You
enough
know?
space for all of us. There really is. There's enough space for all of us to be successful, to live out our
Mhm.
dreams. It doesn't hurt you to be kind.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's really the thing that I think people just need to realize. That's probably why I do, um, really I'm inspired by Wonder Woman, is when you look at the Amazons as a whole, that society is there to lift each other up and
Yeah.
treat each other truly as sisters, and I think it's a really lovely idea.
Mhm. Yeah.
Whether it happens is a different circumstance, but it's a lovely idea, and, I know coming from my publisher, like I have one publishing, one author friend, CR Rice, and she's young adult fantasy.
Okay.
And people still find it crazy that her and I collaborate. They're like, but she's young adult fantasy. I'm like, okay. They're like, you're fantasy. And they find it crazy that two women in fantasy can help each other out. People are still blown away. And we will get it in interviews where they're like, where she'll say, oh, I love Danielle's books. And they're like, but that's fantasy. Aren't you guys against each
Mm,
other? And we're like, against each other? Why
yeah.
would we? Why are we? No, she's young
Yeah.
adult fantasy. I'm fantasy. And we're actually talking about doing a crossover of our series. And people are just like, but you're upset. And I'm like, now, if she was a man, would you be saying,
Right.
and we're just like, so I just think we could all kind of blend
Mm,
together a little more and help each other out.
absolutely. Oh, 100% agree with you. Well, this has been really, really enjoyable, Danielle. Thank you so much. And I really wish you incredible success with your series. And I hope that you just continue writing and putting out all of that great fantasy goodness into the world.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me, and being able to sit and talk to you, and have another woman just to exchange ideas with. It's lovely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. If you want to check out Danielle Orsino, please go to prettypowerfulpodcast.com. She will have all of her links on our website, and you can listen to this as all episodes from the website or from your favorite podcast streaming service. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for joining our guests on the Pretty Powerful Podcast. And we hope you've gained new insight and learned from exceptional women. Remember to subscribe or check out this and all episodes on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Visit us next time. And until then, step into your own power.